to Lipedema Unfiltered. Today I'm going to be sharing my lipedema story. So grab a drink. This is going to be a long one. Sit back and listen, maybe do some housework or take a walk. But let's talk about how I found out that I have lipedema. I knew something was wrong with my body long before anyone could explain it to me. When I was about 9, I noticed that my legs just looked really different from every other kid around me. The best way I could describe it is that my legs had no definition in the calves or the ankles, and they kind of looked like columns or tree trunks. They just had no shape to them whatsoever. And I wasn't the only one who noticed this. There was a lot of teasing going on when I was around 9 or 10 years old, and it was hard to hear that because as a kid, no one likes being teased, obviously, or being excluded or singled out. The thing is, in hindsight, I recognize that they were at least validating what I was already noticing about myself. So the kids teased me, but that means that they saw what I saw, and I wasn't just imagining it. When I was a teenager, it was really hard for me to get past my insecurities that I had started developing when I was younger because once again, there were kids even in junior high, high school that were making comments about my body. Again, recognizing that I was different. And it was not an obvious type of difference, though. Really, I didn't hear any specifics from people about, oh, your legs are so big. People would just make comments about my shape in general being very different. It was very curvy. I'm 5 feet tall, so any weight that I gained on my body anywhere was noticeable. But specifically, I would carry my weight in my lower half, and that was definitely something that was pointed out to me quite a bit. I was self-conscious, and I wasn't involved in any sports or anything like that. I wasn't an athletic kid, but I certainly wasn't gonna join a sports team feeling so self-conscious as I was because I thought that I just wouldn't fit in, wouldn't be welcome in those spaces. But when I was 19, I actually started running, and that was something I wanted to do as a means to lose weight. That's truly why I started running at that age. It was in the time between high school and college that I started, and I kept that up for many years. It was definitely something that I turned to as a means for what I thought was a quick form of exercise. I could kind of knock out a couple miles in a short amount of time and then just go about my day. I never really enjoyed the process of running, but I definitely enjoyed how it made me feel. The rush of endorphins was quite nice. So I would just kept up with that for years. And the thing is, I never saw a reduction in my legs, despite all the miles run. Didn't matter. I stayed relatively stable in my weight on the scale, but my legs just never got thinner, and I never could get definition. And diet and exercise always goes together for me. I've been since the time I was in college, I've been conscious of what I'm putting into my body, what I'm eating, and I've tried different things over time. When I had the most success was when I was in college and I tried Atkins. It was all the craze at the time, and that was very successful for me, and that was probably when I was at my lightest on the scale. Even then, my legs were still very heavy. I had thick ankles and not much curvature in my lower legs, and I had even incorporated strength training at that time as well. So, right about the time I was doing Atkins, I'd also tried Body for Life. If you know, you know. That was my introduction to strength training, and I really enjoyed that. And I kept up with it for quite a few years. And even times when I would wane off of that, I would pick it back up again because I really thought that it was good to build that muscle. I could never see tone in my arms though. And as time went on, I started to notice that it wasn't just my lower legs that were becoming thick or undefined. It didn't matter how much strength training I did. It was really difficult for me to even see any of my muscles. And I was frustrated. just thinking, what is going on? What is wrong with me that I can't seem to find any exercise regimen that will show progress? But at least I was maintaining a very stable weight. And being as short as I am, I don't feel good when I'm above a certain weight. So I've been very mindful of the scale. I don't think in an unhealthy way, but as a means for me to understand fluctuations beyond just a few pounds here and there. When I started over time in my late 20s to early 30s, when I started seeing this trend upwards, very slow, but it was a trend upwards on the scale, I was paying attention to that, thinking, I'm not really changing much else. What's going on? But there was this slow creep in the scale. And I noticed that I really, in general, don't feel good if I'm above 130 pounds, which for many years I was above that weight. And that's something that I've noticed just for me personally. I know that some others might say that that is a good weight or maybe that's too low, but again, I'm 5 feet tall, so there is, we all have to recognize, I think, in general, that there is a number on the scale, but that is relative to a lot of other factors in someone's life. But I know for me personally, as my weight crept up slowly over time, it definitely didn't make me feel good. When I was around 30, I had a massive gallbladder attack and ended up having my gallbladder removed. That was the first time that I had a major shift in what my nutrition plan protocol was. What had worked for me for so many years, I thought at the time had led me to the gallbladder attack. In hindsight, there's a lot of factors that led to that moment. If I knew then what I know now, I would have handled that differently. But I ended up shifting to a very strict nutrition plan that I don't think was very nutritious. The only benefit at the time was that I steered away from dairy and sugar for about 6 months. That was actually a wise move. Unfortunately, the information that I was getting at the time was also telling me to stay away from healthy fats. So I ended up eating for a period of time, maybe a year, year and a half, I ended up eating a nutrition plan that was, what was it? What's the best way to describe it? Kind of high in processed foods and then shifting slowly into vegan, which was high in soy. Definitely not the right move for my body. I didn't feel good, especially eating all that processed food, packaged food. It was not good. But that was what I was trying at the time. And even then, all these different times that I changed up what I was eating made no difference in my legs. And then in my 30s, I noticed that my arms were getting pretty heavy. So then it was a matter of not just my legs, but my arms too. Nothing was helping. Things were just getting worse, and I didn't know why. When I hit the age of 33, that's when things really ran off the rails. And I wasn't prepared for what happened at that time. I was still running almost every day. I would say 5 to 6 times a week I was running. One day I hopped on the treadmill like I normally did at the time, and my legs just felt so heavy. It was less than 5 minutes into my daily run, and I had to stop. And I thought maybe I was getting sick, maybe the flu was coming on, cold, whatever the case. I thought I was just sick, and I would take a day off and I would try again tomorrow. I got on the treadmill the next day. No, it wasn't happening. And I was very confused because I remember it so distinctly. It's burned into my memory that my legs felt like lead, like they were just full of sand or lead or something. And it just was so heavy. And I felt like I couldn't get the momentum in my legs to move. And that's when I started seeking advice from medical professionals to no avail. This led me on several years of a quest of just looking for answers, and I got nothing except for some really very unhelpful comments from medical professionals. And I'm talking general practitioners, specialists of various kinds. We're talking, you make an appointment and you wait months to see this person, and then you walk in the office and you tell them, "Hey, I'm a runner. I can't run anymore. My legs are really heavy. I can't lose weight. I'm eating healthy. I don't know what to do." And the response that I got from a general practitioner was, "You're too young to have these symptoms." And that was all he told me. He didn't have any answers. He didn't want to try anything. He just said, "You're too young." That's not helpful. The next person I saw wanted to do a hip replacement. That's not helpful. I sought the help of a rheumatologist, and he was the first doctor that actually, I guess, he tried. He listened to me, and he heard my symptoms, and he heard that I was in pain and I was struggling. I also had a couple other symptoms that were coming on. It was more than just the heaviness in the legs. That was the first noticeable thing that really got me thinking, okay, there's something wrong here. But then I was starting to have this brain fog, chronic fatigue, other things were happening. So I saw a rheumatologist, and he was willing to at least try. And so he ran a battery of tests, didn't find anything wrong. But he said, "You know what? Since autoimmune diseases run in your family, let's just treat you as if you have rheumatoid arthritis." And I do not recommend that. Don't try this at home. I was on 4 different medications at first, and then 2 more were added later. So over the course of the next 4 years, I was on 6 different medications. And I'll probably make a separate video to talk in depth about the treatment plan I was on and what it did over the next several years. I think it's helpful to the story, but I think it's probably not relevant in this particular video for me to deep dive into what I was prescribed. Um, but is definitely something I want to talk about in the future. So I'll make a separate video. Subscribe to my channel, turn on the notifications, because I will have several videos coming in the future about, deep diving into some of these things I'm talking about in this one. So if you'd like to see them when they are uploaded, please just subscribe and turn on notifications and you'll see them. So after about 4 years of trying these medications, they took the edge off of what I was feeling, but never really addressed the root cause. So overall was not helpful. I decided to seek out a naturopath. If pharmaceutical industry is not helping in this scenario, then why don't I try naturopath? What am I missing? What am I not thinking of? So this was helpful in many ways. Still didn't really get at the root cause, but it was extremely helpful for me. Now I did have to pay out of pocket for that because insurance companies do not cover this particular type of care. But I was talking to the naturopath. She went in so much detail about my history, what I have been through, all the things I've described here in this video so far. And she just decided it was best for me to try a whole 30 elimination diet. And this was so enlightening to me because it was helping me to analyze through food journals and through tracking my symptoms and really being mindful about what I was eating and going back to the basics and getting to this very whole foods based, minimalistic avenue of day to day eating for a whole month. It helped me to recognize some of the bad habits I developed over the years. And these are habits that I think most of us develop being in the United States. We kind of grew up a certain way and have easy access to certain things that we think are food, but they're not really food. So it was very good for me to take the step of doing Whole 30. I'll link below what Whole 30 is into the description of this video. So if you're curious, I'm not necessarily making a recommendation. It's a very strict regimen to follow, But if you are up to experimenting with trying to find out what foods might be causing you inflammation in your body, I think it's worth it for anyone to try. It's very difficult to do, but it's worth a try if you're looking for some new options. Throughout the course of me doing Whole30 and then transitioning to keto, and that's when I started making content on this channel, by the way. Throughout the course of me doing that, I learned some really good habits and learned how to properly track my symptoms and things and really being in tune with my body. I also was tracking my ketones. So I was really, really involved in how I was feeling day to day, keeping food journals, tracking my symptoms, showing to myself how diligent I can be and I tend to be, how analytical I am, really leaning into these skills that I have. And I was very serious about trying to find the root cause of what I was feeling. I felt so much better, but it still did not address my legs or my arms. Interestingly, I'm still not at this point catching on to the fact that this is something beyond my control. I'm still trying to find a way to control these factors. So I did, in fact, Google big legs can't lose weight. It seems so simple, but it was one of the best things I ever did. When is this motorcycle going to stop making noise? Okay. For the first time, I saw pictures of other people whose legs looked like mine. I can't even tell you how that felt for me to see pictures of other people who look like me. That's part of why this channel exists and why I'm sharing this story today. Because if I had had someone to look to for information, for explanation earlier in my life, I wouldn't have spent so many years torturing myself, trying to do better, do more things, control more factors that I couldn't control. So it was very validating for me to say, oh, this is an actual disease. Oh, it's not something I can fix, but it is something I can manage. And at that point, we're talking, this is around 2019. I I found this information and I found the name lipedema, but I still wasn't 100% accepting it. It just I wasn't there yet. I still felt like maybe I could keep trying harder. Even though I knew, okay, I've got this. I still wasn't in full acceptance mode yet. So in 2020, we all know what happened. The world went crazy. Things shut down, and to be completely transparent, I wasn't in a terrible headspace during that time. I was feeling pretty comfortable. I'd already developed some really strong habits of cooking my meals at home and sourcing foods from different areas, different stores, and I I know a lot of people really struggled during that time because restaurants were closed down, and I don't I had already gotten out of the habit of eating at restaurants, so it really wasn't a big impact. In this house, we were like, okay, we're just going to keep doing our thing. Not much changed in our day to day habits as a result of 2020 and the whole global thing. I'm not saying I'm being very careful with my words here because YouTube is kind of crazy sometimes. So in 2021, I got my Peloton. This thing has been such an amazing tool for me. After I had to give up running, I really didn't find the right exercise that made me feel like, okay, yes, I want to get up and do this. It was kind of like, yeah, I would walk around the neighborhood. Yeah, I could never find anything that really made me feel excited to work out until I got the Peloton. So in 2021, I started doing rides and started doing strength training regularly. And I'm so glad that I did because I have all that data. I have a solid data set of how active I was during from 2021 until now. And I would even sometimes take the same ride over and over again to see how my output would change over time. One would expect that the more you work out, the stronger you get, the better your output's going to be. Thankfully, I have the data to show that while I was exercising regularly, getting stronger, building muscle, my output was decreasing. My mobility was being affected by what? The thing that I had not yet accepted. So it wasn't until 2023 that things really changed. And I finally accepted that lipedema was real, that it was something I have, and that I needed to manage it differently. What changed for me that threw me into full acceptance was when I actually got that virus that was going around the world. I didn't get it until October of 2023. I was at a work event. I was traveling out of state at a work event, and someone brought this lovely gift with them and spread it to everyone. So I got it for the first time. What really opened my eyes to how lipedema impacts the lymphatic system was how my body responded to that thing. I'm just going to call it CVID. That lingered in my body for 2 weeks straight. I tested positive for 2 weeks, solid 14 days. Oh my God, that would never, it wouldn't go away. And I understand now why. And perhaps if I had accepted lipedema diagnosis or self diagnosis earlier and started to do the research about how to support the lymphatics, perhaps I would have been able to kind of deal with that differently. But I didn't know at the time. So my inflammation just went through the roof. It wreaked havoc on my body. I started developing pain and symptoms in places I didn't know existed. I had solid chronic lower back pain that just kind of showed up and never went away. Same thing with my neck pain. I had this neck pain over here that just was chronic every day. And I ended up going to see a chiropractor, hoping that that would help. The chiropractor took x-rays, and I'm going to share some of them here because he actually was able to see that, yes, in fact, I do have a broken tailbone. I broke that when I was 16 years old. Thank you very much for my first job. I broke my tailbone, and it was now, after all these years, starting to cause pain. And I was feeling it every day. I also was breaking out in skin rashes, and I was depressed. I had this chronic fatigue, and I just had generalized inflammation. But the chiropractor was actually able to show me in some x-rays of other problems I had that I never knew I had. This 2023 was just a whirlwind of, oh my God, I have this wrong and I have that wrong. And oh, it just seemed to explode all at once. This is very common with people who have lipedema, that we kind of go on these rides of things increase and then they stabilize and then they increase and then they stabilize and then they increase. Like, we go through phases, and this was a phase for me. But it seemed to be, this CVID was the catalyst for this phase. And my legs just felt even more like lead. My 33-year-old self did not know how bad it could get. So going up a flight of stairs would be enough for my thighs to just feel like they were going to collapse. And I didn't know what to do, but I knew that I had to do something. So it was then like late 2023, early 2024, when I finally accepted lipedema and accepted that I need to get a diagnosis because I got to do something. Now that I was in acceptance mode, and I was looking for next steps for a diagnosis, I I knew that there were going to have to be additional changes I was going to make in life. And I had to lean in on some of the doctors that already had access to ask them for referrals to specialists. And that was that's another video that I'm going to make about how to get a diagnosis, certain things that you might have to do if there are barriers due to insurance companies having strict rules and things like that. So I will make a video in the very near future about some of the ways that I was able to get a diagnosis through referrals, that may be a little bit unconventional or thinking outside the box. So I knew that I needed to get to a specialist that could diagnose me, and it was a long waiting period to do so. But I also knew that I had to address my very out of control inflammation that I was having at the time with the skin rashes and things like that. So while I was seeking access to doctors that could diagnose me with lipedema, or at least evaluate me to confirm that I have this, spoiler alert, I do. Um, I needed to do something to control the inflammation immediately. So I decided to shift from keto over to carnivore. So from January 2024 onward for, I think it was 4 months. For those 4 months, I was very strict carnivore. And I'm mentioning this because A, it did actually help control some of the inflammation. It brought it down. So it was a little bit more manageable because I was just getting rid of vegetables, and I was really just eating meat and eggs for 4 months. I do want to mention that the danger of some of these online communities that are talking about certain nutrition plans being the fix all for everything. When we have lipedema, it's not that simple, because I do recall so many times hearing someone say, if you just eat meat and stay away from vegetables, drink your water, drink your electrolytes, the weight's just going to come off. Let me tell you how damaging that is to hear over and over and over again when you know it's not true. For someone with lipedema, that is one of those exceptions to the rule that they never seem to talk about. So it was something I'm glad that I did, because it did in fact bring my inflammation down substantially while I was waiting to get in to see these doctors for a diagnosis. But it was so frustrating to hear these people talk matter of factly of, if you do this, it's going to be perfect. I'm sorry. There are some of us who just do not respond that way. And it's because the disease itself robs us of our ability to see results. So it doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. It just means that we're not going to see the results that those people were promising us. So that was a little bit frustrating at the time. I was also seeking some answers about conservative treatments that I could follow for managing my lipedema. So while I was waiting for my diagnosis, I was still going through the steps of trying to manage things with conservative measures like compression garments and a vibration plate. I also learned how to do manual lymphatic drainage. So I would do that here at home. I also went to see a physical therapist who also did manual lymphatic drainage and made those regular appointments. I was still seeing my chiropractor. I was starting meditation. I would do lower impact rides on the Peloton. So it's already sort of low impact, but I was doing specifically low impact rides to make sure that I wasn't doing too much. But I was also doing strength training, building muscle. And I was able to get a prescription through my physical therapist to get a lymphatic pump. So I could do that once a day on my arms and legs. So these were the things I was doing while I was waiting for my diagnosis. 2024 was the year for me to get all of the answers that I needed about what lipedema is and what it had been doing to me my entire life. I ended up getting a diagnosis from two different vascular specialists. Once again, video coming very soon, talking in depth about that. There's a reason that I got two diagnoses. I wanted to make sure that my insurance company knew that I have lipedema. I was also researching surgery options. I didn't actually know that there was a surgery for lipedema until I got serious about finding a diagnosis. And I will say there was a lot of shame that I was carrying my entire life for my body. And I didn't realize how much shame I was going to feel about even researching getting surgery. I needed to have an advocate in my corner, even though here I was advocating for others to take control of their health and nutrition. Me having put out this content on this YouTube channel about ketogenic nutrition plans and recipes and why it's important to eat healthy. Here I was advocating for others, but I still wasn't fully advocating for myself. So one day I'm sitting on the living room floor. I'm just feeling very depressed and very defeated, knowing at that point that there really wasn't anything I can do to reverse what lipedema had done. And so here I was also feeling just very foreign in my body. I feel just so disconnected. The brain and the body are not connected when you have lipedema because you just feel like your body is not yours. And this skin that I'm in is just not, it's not me. But looking at the surgery and seeing the descriptions of it, what the tools are that are used for it and how it's, it's a form of liposuction, I instantly felt shame. And then I talked about it with my husband, just saying, I really think I should do this, but I just feel like I'm going to be judged for it. And he, being my advocate, he looked at me and he said, "Who the fuck cares?" He's right. Who cares? I had to let go of that shame that I'd carried all of my life so that I could truly advocate for myself and say, you know what? I don't care if someone's going to judge me for this because this, in fact, is an avenue I want to pursue. Now that I could see that my mobility was being affected negatively by lipedema, I wanted to see if surgery could help me gain that mobility back because I'm the kind of person who wants to be around when I'm 90. I want to be thriving every day of my life. And the fact that I was losing my mobility in my 40s was not acceptable to me. And if there was anything I could do to gain that back, I was going to try. So my husband helped me to let go of that shame and to say, you know what? I don't care. People can judge me. And if you're watching this right now and you're thinking that lipedema surgery is not real, I don't care because I'm living proof that it actually does work. You got to put in the work beforehand, build the good habits beforehand. But if you build those good habits and you take care of yourself and you take this surgery and the recovery seriously, I'm living proof that it actually improved my mobility. And again, I have all the data to back this up. Now, this takes us into 2025, the year I got surgery. And that also, video to come, dedicated to how I chose my surgeon, why I chose my surgeon, and what surgery was like, what the recovery was like. I'm going to share all of that. It is very necessary that people understand because I will say I went to advanced lipedema treatment in Salt Lake City, Utah. The surgical team could not have been more professional and more caring. I would do it 1,000 times over with this surgical team. They were wonderful and they have given me my life back. And I think that it warrants a whole separate video talking in depth about what that was like. Meeting the surgical team, the surgeon is so professional and made me feel at ease from the moment that I had my first virtual consult with him. He helped me to recognize that even though I had already started to let go of the shame of having surgery, he helped put me at ease from that very first virtual consult by recognizing very specific details about me personally. He saw me and he saw my journey as being unique. And that's what I was looking for. So he explained everything in detail about what the surgery was going to be like, what the recovery was. He was also recognizing that I was doing a lot of great habits ahead of time. So he didn't have to worry about going in depth about new things to do to recover. He was like, no, 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 just do what you're doing. I had the surgery. There were three separate surgeries. Starting, the first one was my the part of my body that had the first symptoms. It was my lower legs. That was my first surgery. But he also addressed my lower back because that lower back pain was lipedema. And my second surgery was on my thighs, and my third surgery was on the back of my arms, my upper arms. So I had all three of those surgeries in the spring of 2025. And recovery was tough, but it was nothing compared to what I've been through throughout my life. I I was actually expecting it to be worse. It again, it was rough, but I expected it to be a lot worse. The habits that I had intact before surgery were just my new normal after surgery. I could focus on the actual surgery recovery and not having to start new things as a protocol for surgery recovery. I was just doing my thing. I was just doing my normal thing to recover. I am still doing conservative treatments today. I have been able to knock back some of them. So, my vibration plate, I don't use every day anymore. I just use it occasionally as needed. But as for compression garments, I still wear them every day. For my low impact exercise, still do that about four ish times a week. And I did really stop doing strength training for quite a while after surgery, but I am at the point now where I'm back at it, enjoying it, doing great things, building more muscle, loving it. And in fact, the muscle that I built with my strength training before surgery is visible after surgery. So I'm doing compression every single day. I'm doing manual lymphatic drainage, usually through my lymphatic pump. But on occasion, if I don't have access to that because I'm traveling, I will still do manual lymphatic drainage myself. And I also open up my lymphatic points on my body prior to workouts. That helps to make sure that I'm sweating appropriately, that that's being released from my body, not getting trapped inside. Now, if you're curious about lymphatic drainage and why it's critical to lymphedema and lipedema patients, comment below. Let me know if you'd like a video on that. I can go into depth about the methods for MLD. That's what we call it, MLD. The methods for MLD, the reason it's important. I can do a video on that if you're curious. I can also link some good resources below. So just let me know if that's something that you'd like to see. I'm also microdosing a GLP-1. And this is something that is a little bit controversial for some folks because I know there's a lot of people who feel very strongly that GLP-1s are not good. I will say that I actually started microdosing before I saw my surgeon for my 6-month checkup. And when I saw him, he said he was planning on recommending it anyways. So this is definitely something that my surgeon is in favor of. And he is happy with the results. I'm happy with the results. The purpose of me taking it is not for weight loss. It's definitely not for that purpose. That did come with it. That's definitely been a benefit of microdosing, but I truly am on a very low dose of it. I don't need to be on the standard protocol, so I am dosing it myself 3 times a week. And this has really helped to control my inflammation. I'm so in tune with my body right now that I can feel when the inflammation's starting to creep up due to my menstrual cycle, or maybe if I eat something that's not in my normal plan, then and if it's something that is in fact not good for my body, I can feel that. And so I can kind of tick up and tick down as needed. But again, I'm between 5 and 6 milligrams a week. It's really not that much. That's the maximum I've ever been on. I've never been above that. So it's something that I've incorporated into my post-surgery protocol, and it's worked really well to control my inflammation. And I'm very happy with the results that I have. So today, for the first time in my life, I feel at home in my body. Lipedema is something that takes so much from us. It takes our mobility, it takes our peace of mind, it takes our mind body connection. It makes us feel like our body is not our own. And it takes away our ability to see progress in the gym. And a lot of people who see us who don't know what lipedema is or don't know that we have it, they might look at us and say, well, you should get yourself in the gym. It might help you. Well, you know what? I am. And I'm never going to see those results. I didn't until I had surgery. And surgery is not for everyone. I do want to acknowledge that. I am not here to say that everyone needs surgery. This is completely individual based on where each person is at. These are just options that are available to us as treatment. They need to be more readily accessible to us. That's the purpose of this channel, is to bring awareness and to advocate and to share information with each other, because each of us should be able to decide what is the right treatment plan with our healthcare providers. But our healthcare providers need to understand what this is. And then our insurance companies need to understand what this is so that they can provide the coverage necessary and stop treating this like it's a cosmetic route. This is not cosmetic. And I'm so grateful that I kept track of my food journals and my symptoms, and I have all the data from this bike behind me. I can show over time what this has done to me, and that the plan, the course of action I took has helped me, but there were certainly things outside of my control that I never would have been able to cure on my own. There is no cure for this disease. I want to be very clear about that. But there are certain things, that treatments that I could not have done on my own, that have reset me into a different place in my life, that has allowed me to gain back some of my mobility that I was losing before I had the surgery. Again, all of the work that I put in before surgery, I am still doing today. That work was necessary. The way that I eat, the way that I exercise, the way that I do things, conservative treatments to help my body, those are all very necessary. And they needed to be in place before I got my surgery. For some people, those conservative treatments are all that they need. And that's why it's important that we talk about this and normalize this conversation about lipedema. It is a disease that can be absolutely debilitating if not treated properly. The earlier we catch this, the better chance we have at avoiding some of the treatments that are necessary as it gets worse and worse and worse. Perhaps if I had access to what lipedema is, and if I had gotten a diagnosis earlier in my life, maybe I would have been able to catch this at a point that could have stabilized me and not taken my mobility away. I'll never know for sure, but I'm hoping that the more we talk about this, the more the medical community understands about this, the better chance we have at getting people treatments earlier in life so that they don't have to get where I was. Thank you so much for being here and hearing my story. And if you've made it this far, I appreciate you so much for sticking through this very long video. I promise not all my videos are going to be this long, but for those of us who have this kind of story to share, it takes a little bit of time to get through all the details that we feel are really relevant to where we are today. So I'm grateful that you're here. Thank you so much for being here with me, and we're just getting started.